With Procreate 2.7, 3D and 2D artists alike can enter the world of 3D texture creation with the ability to easily paint directly on a 3D model. All you need is an iPad, an Apple Pencil, and a lot of Bob Ross quotes. Be sure to download the project file so you can follow along. You'll find the link to the files in the description of this video. To get started painting on a 3D model, you first need a 3D model. While Procreate has a few models provided that you can play around with, you can of course import your own 3D models into Procreate. The 3D formats that are supported by Procreate are limited to OBJ and USD files. Now, many sites like TurboSquid and CG Trader have most of their models available in OBJ format. And if you have a 3D DCC like Blender or C4D, you can use them to convert 3D models from many other sites like My Mini Factory into OBJ or USD files fairly easily. But what if you made your own model in Cinema 4D? Let's cover how you can get your masterpiece from Cinema 4D and into Procreate so you can let those Bob Ross puns fly. So step one in prepping your model is baking it down so it's a polygonal mesh. So here I have a bunch of generators. So if you have generators, deformers, you want to bake that down. So I'm going to bake down the subdivision surface symmetry object by hitting the C key. And I'm just going to go ahead and select these two nulls, go to Object, Delete Without Children. That will delete those parents, leave the child. And now we have our resulting mesh. Now the second step and the most important step is you want to make sure you have good UVs. And this is the big gotcha if you have a custom model and you're exporting it out to Procreate. Now you might be wondering, what the heck is a UV? Well, if I go to the UV edit layout here, you can see here is our UV editor on the left and our 3D model on the right. And basically what a UV is a 2D representation of a texture on a 3D object. So if I go to View, Configure, go to the back tab, load up a test UV map. This is just a text texture you can use for reference. You can see that a UV is the link between an image texture, like this grid pattern, and how it's mapped onto this mesh surface. And you can see we have a lot of issues here. We have some of this texture stretching. We have these grid letters and numbers flipped. And if I go and select some of these polygons here, you can see I'm selecting like a symmetrical version of it, and you can see that these polygons are actually overlapping each other on this UV map. If we were to export this out as is to Procreate, it would almost be like trying to paint the Mona Lisa on a canvas that's like folded into an origami thing or crumpled up into a ball. You want to have a flat canvas that you can paint on, and as of right now, this UV is what the kids say hot garbage. It's not going to be good for Procreate. But luckily, there is an easy way to fix this and generate better UVs, and that's using the automatic UV algorithm in Cinema 4D. And I would say 9 times out of 10, it works every time. But if we just go ahead and make sure we don't have any of these polygons selected by just clicking anywhere outside of this UV map area, I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply. And automatically you're going to see that the stretch part of that texture is gone. We have a really nice grid. All the letters and numbers are upright and facing the right direction. And this right here is good enough to export to Procreate. But I just want to show you one easy way to be able to manually unwrap your models as well. And basically when you think of UV unwrapping, you basically want to define the seams on your object. Think about if your object was a stuffed animal, where would the seam be that it would be stitched together with? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this UVW tag because I'm going to create a totally new one. And basically to define a seam, you're basically just going to select some edges. So I'm going to go to edge selection and I'm going to go UL to bring up my loop selection. And I'm just going to select like right here, this loop selection. And that's where the seam would be. This is where the stitching would be. You know, you would put some stuffing in there, put a little squeaky thing in there and stitch it all up, right? So once you have that seam defined, I'm going to go to UV unwrap and you're going to see, voila, we have a new UV map here. You can see we have 2 islands of polygons versus 6 as we did before. And if I go to my polygon selection mode, go to my move tool, and if I go ahead and say double click on this UV island here, I can move this around and you can change how this group of polygons is mapped to this grid texture here, this test grid. I can also go to the backside, and you actually can see that our texture is rotated a little bit on the backside. So this island right here, I'm gonna double click here to select all the polygons and move this over just so I can see this a little bit better. And basically all I need to do is grab the rotate tool by hitting R, and then I can rotate this, and wherever you rotate from is your pivot. So you can see as I click and drag, if I rotate just like this, I'm just basically gonna try to line up this grid line with the edges of the polygon. So I'll hit E for the move tool and just kind of line that up. And I would say that's looking pretty good. Now, if this was flipped, you could go and right click and mirror the U or the V like that, but this is actually aligned perfectly, so I don't need to do that. And now at this point, with this custom UV, you could again at this point just go and directly export out to Procreate using USD or an OBJ. Now already you've seen there's a few little things that you have to keep in mind to prep your model to export into Procreate, and there's one more that concerns texture resolution. By default, if you just import a random model into Procreate, you're going to be limited to 2K resolution as far as the resolution you can paint your textures in. Now there's one way to get around that, and that is by applying a 4K material to your object in your 3D app of choice and exporting that texture out with your model using the USDZ format. And that way, when you import your model with your base texture, it'll be able to allow you to paint in 4K. It's a little weird, but if you have an older iPad model or you don't care about painting in 4K, you can kind of skip this section altogether. But creating your own base texture at 4K actually allows for a lot of flexibility. So let's check out how to do just that. All right, so let's go ahead and make some basic materials here just for like color reference. And I'm just gonna go and create a new default material. And for this, I'm just gonna load up the luminance because I don't want any diffuse information here that would be loaded in the color channel. I just want luminance. And here I'm just gonna choose like, what is that base color I want for, say, the face mask here. And I'll just choose this like light cream color. I'll go to the Daruma object. Let's go to the polygon selection tool and go UL. And let's get a loop selection, hit UF, hold the shift key down, add to that selection. I'm just gonna apply that material to the mask area there, and then I'll just go ahead, command click and drag, duplicate that material, and let's choose whatever material color we want for the rest of the Daruma. So I'll choose like this red, and you could totally choose the color, the exact color that you want to color your model, or you can totally paint over this in Procreate. So it's kind of up to you. I'm just gonna go ahead and apply that material, move this to the left, so we'll have the red followed by the white material. And now we're ready to basically bake out this material into an image texture. So to do that, I'm gonna select the model here, go to Object, Bake Material, and here we have the tag option where we can basically choose the file name, choose the file format, just use TIFF, and choose where we're going to save this. So I'm just gonna choose Daruma, hit save, and then here's where we can choose the color depth and the width and height. So again, for me, I have an iPad Pro. I'm going to bake this out at 4K, but remember, if you only have an older iPad, you're just going to want to bake this out as a 2K texture. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna go 4096, 4096. Super sampling, this is gonna remove some of the aliasing, and pixel border will give a little bit of a buffer and grow out your colors just so you don't have any seams showing up when we bring this into Procreate. So I'm gonna bring the pixel border all the way up to 20, check on continue UVs, and then for the background color, you just wanna make sure that it's a different color from whatever colors you're using on your model. So I'll just choose like a dark red, and if I go to options, basically all I want here is to bake out the surface color, and we can go and preview this. And you'll see that there's our cream color, there's our red color, and there's our background color. So you can see why you want to make sure you have a different color for your background than any of the colors here, because you wouldn't know where your UV map starts and where your background kind of ends, okay? And this is great if you want to paint in a 2D view in Procreate, which you can totally do. Like you can paint in this 2D view here, get exactly what you want, as well as paint directly on the model. So this is looking good. I'm just gonna go ahead and bake this out now, and I'm just gonna replace that image there. So now what we have to do is replace the basic C4D materials here with that image texture based material. And there's one last gotcha. I know there's a bunch of gotchas here, but the only type of material that Procreate uses and recognizes is physically based node materials, okay? So what we're gonna do is go to new node material, and let me just delete these materials we have on here. I'm going to double click on this node, and if nodes freak you out, don't worry, we're just gonna do two things. One is hit the plus button to bring up our node search window. We're gonna type in image, we're gonna double click on that image, bring in that image node. If we click on the image node, we can go into the file area, load up this Daruma surface color here. You can see it's that TIFF file and it's 4K. I'm gonna open that up. And then all we need to do now is click and drag from this result output to this color input port, and we can close out of the node editor. And another thing we can do is actually rename this material, because the name of this material will actually load into Procreate. So I'll just name this Daruma, and I'll just apply that to my object. And you can see there is our node-based material using that image texture. And I'm gonna go one last step, because if you want to, say, isolate the face and the rest of the body, you can actually break this object out into separate objects, say one object that has the mask area here, the face, and then another object that's just the rest of the body, and you actually can paint on those objects independently without affecting the other object. And you can also paint on both objects at once using Procreate, but this just adds another layer of flexibility. So what I'm going to do is, with these polygons selected for the face area, I'm going to right click, go to split, and that's going to create a new object with just that polygon selection. I'm going to rename this face, because again, the name of the objects will also import and carry over to Procreate. And then for the Daruma, I'm going to click on that. I still have those polygons selected on that object, so I'm just going to hit delete to delete those polygons. And now I have a separate Daruma body object and a separate face object. So I now have the option to, in Procreate, just paint on this face area or just paint on the Daruma object here. So it just adds that extra layer of flexibility. And now at this point, everything's all set. I got my models prepped, got my image texture applied. Now I'm gonna go and export this out. So File, Export, and the only file format that we can actually include those node-based materials and have them carry over and get imported to Procreate is this USD format. So in our export settings, we are going to make sure that this zipped.usd format is checked on. This will allow us to zip together both the geometry and the image texture into a single file format that will be recognized by Procreate. So when we load this up in Procreate, we'll have our model and the materials applied. We also want to make sure we have this baked materials checked on as well. And for me, I'm going to use 4K. But again, remember, if you are using an older iPad, you want to keep this at 2K. And so I'm going to also choose a depth of 16-bit. We'll use the PNG format. And then that's basically it. We'll hit OK. And I'm just going to name this as Daruma for Procreate. Hit enter. And so I exported that USDZ file to my Dropbox, and this is how I'm going to actually import this into my iPad, because I have a Dropbox app on my iPad. I can open up this file, import it onto my iPad, load it into Procreate. If you're in a Mac environment, you could totally go ahead and use your iCloud drive, save your file there, and be able to import this to your iPad. But at this point, let's go ahead and jump to the iPad and fire up Procreate. So let's go, and I'm going to open up my Dropbox app, and there is my Daruma for Procreate USDZ. You can see that you can actually view this as a 3D object here, kind of twirl around, kind of check your model, see if there's any seams, anything like that. But this is looking really nice. And to export this out, we're just going to go hit those three dots up here. We're going to go to Share, Export File, and we're going to save to Files. And here I created a new folder, which you can do right there, and just named it 3D. And that's where I'm going to save all of my 3D assets. So I'm just going to save in that folder, hit save, replace. And now we can go ahead and open up Procreate. So you can see I already had some practice runs here with this Daruma doll. But to import your model, we're just going to go click Import. And then we're going to find that USDZ file. And it's going to open up a Procreate file, and here is our model. Now I just want to go over some navigation. Use your two fingers to pan, pinch to zoom in and out. And if you want to snap this back to its original size, just kind of pinch in there and that will snap it back to its original size. But pretty easy to kind of rotate around, zoom in and out, and do whatever you want here. Now if we look at our model, it has this like default shiny material on it. But if we go to our layers, you can see here are our two objects. We have our Daruma object, which is the red part, and then we have the face, which is that separate face object here. And again, this gives us maximum flexibility. I can tap on whatever object I want to paint on, and it'll highlight blue, and I can isolate those individual objects and paint on whichever object I want. So let's go ahead and start painting on our model. And before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just add a new layer. So this is gonna work just like Photoshop. You don't wanna mess up your background layer here after all. You can see there's our baked texture right there with our little mask, our background color in that red color. If I tap on this layer, I can rename this, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this eyes and hit enter. And now I can just tap on that face mask and kind of zoom in here, get a good angle. Let's go and grab a brush. You can see I have some recent ones here. I'm gonna go and grab this syrup brush, and you can tap that open to kind of see what that brush looks like here, which is really cool. I'm gonna go hit done, and I'm just gonna tap out of that, and let's choose a color. Let's choose this yellow, and I'm going to just kind of draw a circle here for the main eyeball here. Make this brush a little bit bigger. It's something like this. Okay, and that looks fairly round. I'm not a good drawer, fair warning. And you know, I could barely, this is the best circle I can possibly make. I'm sorry, I apologize. So just a sidebar, in Procreate 5.2, they added really cool stabilization tools where if you're a terrible drawer like me, you can actually add some stabilization. So here if I draw, it's going to smooth out my stroke, and you can actually adjust the amount there. So if you draw super fast, you can see this like kind of spaghetti thing. If you draw super slow, you can get pretty precise, smooth lines. So definitely check out the stabilization tools added. So let's go ahead, and there's the outer part of our eye. Let's grab this black color and kind of zoom in here. And again, this is my best circle. I apologize. But as Bob Ross says, we don't make any mistakes, just happy accidents, and everything here is going to be a happy accident. Let's just call it that. So we got this eye. It's looking a little bit weird, but the cool thing about working in Procreate and setting up your UVs and setting up your texture is you can actually view that and paint directly on that 2D UV map in Procreate. So what I'm going to do is tap on this gear icon for the settings, go to 3D, and then click on Show 2D Texture. And here you can see my 2D texture map with the UVs already unwrapped, all that good stuff. And there is my eye that I just painted in 3D. Now, one of the cool things is you can paint in this view, just like that. Now, if you want to undo, just tap with two fingers once, and that will undo. I'm going to be using that a lot. But you can see I can paint here. Now, again, we have no reference for what this looks like on the 3D model painting in this 2D view. So what we're going to do is go back to our settings menu, go to canvas, and check on reference. In here, if I just click and drag on this top part of this window, we have this 3D reference window that we can use to, navigate around and see our 3D view while we paint in our 2D view. And this is really cool and powerful. We can resize this window if we want to, and zoom in, orbit around, whatever we want to do. And this is just really, really powerful. So I can really dial in and try to make a better circle in this 2D view. You can see I'm like kind of failing here, but you can see I accidentally sampled this color. If you press and hold, you can actually sample that color. So I'm going to press and hold and load up this black color. You can always see what color you're using back up here in this right corner. I'm just going to try to, fix this a little bit here. And again, I'm doing terribly here. not a good drawer. Happy accidents. And one of the downsides about Procreate is there's no symmetry feature. But luckily, you can easily go ahead and if I wanted to copy and kind of flip this eye from this side to this side, I can easily do that using some of the Procreate tools. So you'll see I have this as my own layer here, the eye layer. And what I'm going to do is with that layer selected, I'm going to take 3 fingers and swipe down. And here I can go ahead and hit duplicate, and that's going to duplicate that layer. And I can move this to the other side, and I can go ahead and even flip this horizontally so I get this nice mirror, okay? And you're not going to see this update on our 3D model just yet, but if I go ahead and click on this arrow to commit those changes, you can see there are our 2 eyes there. And let's actually shrink this down a little bit, just like that. And you can see there are our eyes. So you can continue painting in this view, but one of the most fun things is being able to paint directly on your 3D model. But I just wanted to show that this is possible to be able to work in your 2D view, use all these transform tools, and you can even, if I switch out of this 3D view, go into 3D, turning off that show 2D texture, going to canvas, turning off that reference. One of the cool things is you saw how I could move and edit that eye layer in that 2D view. I can do the same in my 3D view. So if I go back to this menu here, the move tool again, you can see that if I go to my layers menu, when I duplicated and flipped that eye, it created a new layer. So now I can just select that layer, go to my move tool again, and actually move this around in 3D space, which is super cool that I can move this and edit this just like this. You can use the advanced tools and scale this in either axes here. You can rotate this if you wanted to. You can rotate this around by clicking and dragging on this outer circle here to rotate this around. So I'm just going to get out of that and tap with 2 fingers to undo that. But just to show that you can edit all of this in 2D as well. Now what I'm going to do is go to my layers menu, and maybe we say, okay, this actually looks good. I like these eyes. I want to merge this layer down. To do that, I'm just going to tap on that layer, go to merge down, and here is our single layer that I can turn on and off, just like this. And there are our eyes. Now let's go ahead and add more details, but before I do, I want to go ahead and add a reference image. So to do that, I'm going to go to my settings menu here, and I'm going to fire up that reference window again, and instead of just using our 3D view, I'm going to go and tap on image, and I'm going to tap on that import image there, and I'm just going to select this Daruma reference image that I have here, and I'm just going to pinch to resize this, and now I can use this, my 3D view, and start painting using that image as a reference, which is really cool. So let's go ahead, let's add yet another layer here. The great thing is that these layers are all shared here. You can see the sharing, so even if I go to this layer here with the Daruma, I can still paint on this base material here, okay? Because remember in Cinema 4D, we are using one material map on both objects, so whatever we do on this layer will also transfer to the other object as well because we're using the same materials. So let's go ahead, let's rename this layer and hit return. And now what we can do is let's kind of paint some of these little strokes there. So I'm gonna show off my awful drawing skills yet again. Let's do a little something like this. And you can see that I tried to paint on the face and it was only painting on this red part. And that's because I accidentally had this Daruma object selected. So if I just tap that, see that blue highlight, that means I'm going to be painting on just the face now. So I'll do something like this. It looks terrible. Let me increase the size of this brush. Do a little something like that. Sure, that looks good. Do a little something like that. And maybe get some little flourishes like this. And man, I can't tell you how much tapping with 2 fingers to undo, how much I do that. These 2 fingers like really hurt after a while. Let's go ahead, let's make little eyebrows. Let's go ahead, let's do a little flourish thing like this. And let's grab a red color. And actually, I could just go ahead, tap and hold to sample that red color. Let's bring down the size. And this is looking like a very angry Daruma. Let's give it a little cheeky smiley face. So we're not painting happy clouds, we're painting happy Daruma dolls. And that's looking pretty good. Now, one of the cool things about this version of Procreate is you'll notice again that we have these very shiny materials, and you can actually go into your layers, and on this base layer, if you click on this cube wireframe here, you'll reveal three channels, three material channels. Our color channel, our roughness channel, which is basically how shiny or rough your object is, and then the metallic channel as well, which is how much metallic properties does your object have. And basically, these use grayscale values. For roughness, whatever is black means it's going to have no roughness, and if it's white, it'll be a very rough surface, so blurry reflections. And for metallic, if it's black, you have no metallic properties, and if it's white, you have metallic properties. So what I can do is select the metallic channel here, and let's choose like a gray color here. Let's increase the scale. Let's actually change our brush to something textury. Yes, textury is a word. Let's go to materials, and the material brushes are really great. You can add all these really nice imperfections here. So I'm gonna select Glover, and you can see that preview right there. And let's go, and with this gray material, let's just kind of paint here, and you can see that really cool metallic property on the face mask here, okay, which is really kind of cool. And you know, that's pretty shiny, so what we can do is make this a little blurry, so we can go and adjust, if we go to the layers here, go and adjust the roughness. So remember, whatever is white is going to be more rough. So let's choose a lighter gray, and let's rough this up. And you can see that reflection in there is getting more and more rough. So this looks like some worn metal almost now, which could be cool, could not be cool. We can actually go and tap on this Daruma doll. You can see these sharp specular highlights. If I paint over that, you can see that now it's a little bit rough. Okay, so really, really cool. Roughen that up a little bit. We can grab like a giant brush here and really rough up this main layer, something like this. Add all these imperfections, which is really cool to be able to do. Let's go and reorientate this around here. Looking good. And for this mask here, I'll select it by tapping it. What I want to do is actually, let's get rid of all of the metallic properties altogether. So I'll choose black. I'll go to the metallic channel and just paint on here. Let's remove a lot of that metal properties. We still have some of that roughness there, which looks really good, but I'm kind of liking this. It looks like it's worn paint or something like that, and I'm really enjoying that. So now what we can do is let's paint these gold details. And another cool thing about Procreate in this version is they added metallic brushes. So you can actually paint with a metal type of paint almost. So let's go to our brushes. Let's go to recent here. Let's try syrup again. And if I click on that material again, you can see I can preview what this looks like. And if I go to materials right here, I can go and give this brush metallic property. So I can increase the amount here, and you can see that metallic property. I control down the roughness, and you can see how I'm adding or removing roughness on that metal. And another cool thing is in the roughness, we can actually either in the metallic source or roughness source add in grunge maps. So if I go and just tap on this edit button, I can import a grunge material using this source library, and let's do grunge, because why not? And we can say done, and this is going to load up this grunge map, and you can scale this up or down, and you can adjust the amount, but you can see how, if I just paint here, how this roughness map is affecting the roughness channel here. So if I adjust this, you can see what's going on. And that's super cool to be able to add roughness to the roughness channel of a brush. Now, if I go to the metallic source, hit edit, I can do the same thing here, import, source library. And let's go ahead and let's do grunge again. Hit done. And then for this, we can adjust the scale so it's slightly different from the scale here, just so it's not the same kind of roughness there. And adjust the scale here, adjust the amount of metal. And you can kind of preview this. Like, what does this look like? That's looking actually really rough. And so I'll just bring this down. Let's actually, you know what? Let's remove this metallic property altogether. And let's just go blank. So hit done. And now we just have some roughness in the reflection, so that looks a lot more subtle, okay? So I'm gonna hit done, and now with this brush, I can choose, say, a gold hue here, and there we go. And then tap on my Daruma. Let's actually create a new layer. So let's rename this gold. Hit return. So this will be the gold details here. And now let me actually just select that gold again. And let's just test this to make sure this works. Tap on the Daruma. And you can see that I must be drawing on the roughness channel. So accidentally had the roughness channel still selected. So I'm going to go back to color, make sure I have this gold layer selected, the gold color channel. And you can see now I'm painting with this like gold paint, and it's got that roughness added to it, which is really, really cool. So let's double tap to undo that, and let's try to do our best here. I'll try to draw that character, so something like this, and this, and let's do this little like that. That's not too bad. And, you know, if we want to move it or shift it around, remember we can go back to that menu there and just move this around, rotate it if we wanted to. So really a lot of flexibility here. And then when you're done, just tap that arrow again, commit those changes. And we're still on that gold layer, so let's continue drawing these streaks. So let's do something, let's get a thicker brush like that, that, and that. Let's maybe make some stuff over here. And let's get up here as well. Now I'd say that's looking good. And this is where, you know, if we had some symmetry, it would really help with working with this. Now what I want to do to finish this off is add a nice little gold trim around the face mask. And I actually want to draw on both of these objects. So to select both objects, I'm going to tap on one of the objects, and I'm just going to tap and hold on this little rounded rectangle here. So tap and hold on that, and tap on the other object. You'll see that all of our object just turned blue. And now I can actually paint on both of these objects at the same time. So this is where having separate objects really gives you the maximum flexibility, because you could always select both objects all over again. And because these two objects are using the same material, we can then paint on these at the same time. So I'm just going to draw this little outline here. And now you can see right down here that I'm actually painting behind this black layer here. What I can do is just click and drag this up. And now this gold layer is on top of the details layer here. And I can kind of paint in here, get my erase tool, and kind of erase around here. But I really love how you can paint directly on a 3D model here. And what I'm going to do now is go and add like a little bit of dirt. So I'll add a dirt layer. So add a new layer, rename, dirt, hit enter. And let's just sample this dark red color. I might have both of these objects still selected here. but I'll just make sure I do. So I'll tap that layer, hold this rounded rectangle down, select that face mask layer, and let's maybe make this a little bit of a darker color. Let's remove the opacity a little bit, and let's grab this tawny brush and let's just start painting here. Let's make this even darker, make this a smaller size. So now I'm getting this little grunge and dirt applied here. You make this a little bigger. And so this is just adding to the imperfections here. So nothing's like too perfect. You can see how this is still a little shiny on the back here. So we can totally go to our layers, go to our base layer, go to our roughness, and remember that white is rough. So we'll just roughen this a little bit there. You can see the specular highlights are roughening up really nicely, making this more of a matte finish. Maybe do this on the front as well. Roughen some of that gold. And now we can go back and make sure we're drawing on the color channel, make sure we're drawing on that dirt layer, and continue adding in some dirt. Let's get the bottom, don't forget the bottom here. Maybe we grab another grunge brush here just to add a little bit of variety here so you're not using the same texture. So this will look a little more realistic, and we'll just paint here. You can see that's pretty heavy-handed there. So let me tap to undo. Let's bring down the opacity and kind of tap here. We'll tap, tap, tap. Add a little bit of grunge. You can see it's quite a bit of grunge. That's looking pretty nice. And let's just reorientate this here. And I'm kind of seeing a weird kind of thing here. Let me get a different brush. That line right there. Let's try to fix that. So I'm going to see where is that line coming from. Looks like that's the grunge. What I can do is grab the smudge tool, just kind of smudge that a little bit. And the smudge tool is great, especially if you see seams on your texture. You can just smudge it out. Okay, smudge the seams out, but luckily we prepared this model well enough that there's no seams there. So this is looking good. And once you're happy with painting on your model and getting your Bob Ross on, what you can do at this point is actually bring this texture back into Cinema 4D and apply it to your 3D model in Cinema 4D. So how we can do that is by going to this settings menu, going to share, and here you can choose if you want to share the model. You can share an image, which is just a render of this view we currently have. You can also share an animated GIF or animated MP4 of just this kind of rotating around, which is kind of cool, get them gram likes, do it for the gram. But I'm just going to cancel out of that. And now you can do one of two things. You can export out as a USDZ and bring this directly into Cinema 4D, but the downside of this is the USDZ model is going to bring in the textures in the form of a node material. And that's not really going to be easy to convert to, say, Redshift or Octane material. So what I recommend you do is just share the textures. And this is going to export out a PNG texture. What I'm going to do is just save this to my files or save to your Dropbox, wherever you want to do. Let me actually save this to my Dropbox here. You can see that I'm getting an error, but it said it was successful, so hopefully that actually did save. And now what we can do is just go back into Cinema 4D and let's see what these textures look like. Alright, so it looks like that file actually exported, and you'll notice that it's not a PNG file. So you might be wondering what's going on. Well, when you export out a PNG texture from Procreate, it's actually exporting out the color channel, the roughness channel, and the metallic channel. So we actually have 3 PNG files in one. So all we need to do to extract all 3 of those PNG files is to just rename this file to a zip file, and that will change that to a zip file. If I double click to unzip that, you can see here's the folder, and here are our 3 PNG images, color, metallic, and the roughness. So all you have to do is then extract all those 3 PNG files and just import them into Cinema 4D. So I'm going to be using Redshift. You can see that I already imported all three of these textures, so the color, the roughness, and the metallic here. And basically to set up a Redshift texture, I'm just going to go ahead and output the color into the diffuse color. I'm going to output the roughness into the reflection roughness, kind of makes sense. And just to make up for the fact that you can't actually create and export out your own bump or normal map out of Procreate, at least in this version, I just went ahead and pumped in the roughness into a bump map, and I'm just using the roughness for the roughness of the reflection as well as a bump map. You see that adding that bump map actually helps out a lot. And actually one other thing to consider is just going into Procreate and on that color channel, just using grayscale values and grunging it up and create your own bump map that way. And then lastly, we have this metallic texture. To use that in a Redshift material node, what I'm going to do is change this Fresnel type from IOR to metalness. And basically what I'm going to do at this point is output the metallic texture into the reflection metalness. And you'll see that I'll control that value. And now we basically have rebuilt the Procreate texture using Redshift. And of course you want to replace the old textures on your model with the new ones that you created in Redshift or Octane or whatever you're doing. And then I have just my Redshift IPR going in my viewport view. And you can see that this looks pretty dang close to what we had in Procreate, where we got this nice metalness going on, we got this nice gold material, and let's just fire up some Redshift RT here as well, just to see what that looks like. Isn't that nice? So there you have it, the round trip journey between Cinema 4D to Procreate back to Cinema 4D again, and I just love how Procreate allows artists, both 2D and 3D, to be able to paint directly on their 3D models. And I just love how this is gonna just open the floodgates and allow anyone to be a 3D texture artist. Procreate 5.2 is a promising first step into the world of 3D texture painting, and I love that it allows both 2D and 3D artists alike to be able to create textures by literally painting on their 3D model. And to be able to do it with your iPad and your Apple Pencil, it's really an enjoyable experience. Now, that being said, there are some things that I hope they add. One thing being that native 4K texture support, so you don't have to go through all those hoops. And to be able to UV unwrap your model directly in the Procreate app, so then you're not reliant on another app or your 3D desktop app to do that very important step of your modeling process, which is creating those proper UVs. Now, there are some other things on my wish list. Number one being symmetry. I hope they add symmetry and the ability to create bump and normal maps using brushes. Like imagine you're painting with a thick brush and there's paint layering up on your model. That would be incredible. Now I know that this is Procreate 3D like version 1.0, so maybe this stuff is on the horizon. If you have any questions about anything in this tutorial, or you have some really solid Bob Ross puns, be sure to leave those in the comments section below. And if you create your own painted Daruma doll, be sure to tag School of Motion. I can't wait to see those. And if you like this video, give me that thumbs up. And if you want to keep up to date on all the latest happenings in the world of 3D and animation, ding that dingy dong bell. And I hope to see you again soon in another video. Until then, happy painting.